but wanted to understand what kind of products were you working there?
The Walmart stint had two different areas. The first one, which I
Okay.
was handling, was the offline store product movement.
How was the hiring process different from Walmart?
We need to understand how systems or solutions should be built from both product and technical side of it.
Any advice towards product managers aspiring to get into roles at top companies like yourself?
For the first 2 to 4 years, it's basically learning for a product manager because it's not a hard skill that you can go learn and start giving output on day one.
How are you integrating what's going on with LLMs and agentic and everything that's going around in the world right now around AI? So, hi everyone. Today we have Apoorv with us, and Apoorv, welcome to the podcast. So grateful to have you here, and really delighted. So, of course, what we'll start with is if you could give an introduction. Let's know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll try to double click on your journey to help aspiring product managers understand how your journey has been and what you've been doing.
Fair. Thanks, Male, for that introduction. So, to give you a brief high level, right? I think I'm a basic computer science engineer, then MBA, and then into product management. So that I think stays put for a lot of folks, at least in India. So I
Mm-hmm.
completed my graduation in computer science itself back in 2016, and then I joined it was a very small startup by the name of Atra Infotech. I think currently it is Synchron. It got acquired by a MNC in US, and so it
Okay.
was majorly on the lines of software engineering. And around the time I was in Amazon is when I internally thought of switching to a product role because of various reasons, and that is when it clicked me that okay, I may be good at something else which is not development, because not always it happens that okay, the first thing which you try turns out to be the last thing you
Correct.
try. So there was a personal pivot in my career, and then in Amazon actually I was building the ASIN creator tool. So if you would go to any Amazon PDP page or website, you will see a Amazon standard identification number. So it's a general
Mhm.
identifier. So I was building that, basically ingesting any new product on the e-commerce website. For then I moved to Walmart. I was handling their pricing and offer engine. So Walmart and PhonePe was kind of together because it's the same parent organization, Walmart being Walmart.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think around that time it was 75-80% being owned of PhonePe by Walmart. So in PhonePe, I led the merchants payment solutions for all the offline merchants in India. So if you go to any corner shop, you see a normal QR, you see a swipe
No.
machine, you payment links.
Yeah.
So the full end-to-end merchant payment solution on the offline part. And currently, very recently, I've moved to Zepto, and I'm basically handling the ads charter. So when I say ads, it basically infuriates a lot of customers because from a customer perspective, ads is something which is intrusive. Consider Netflix, Amazon Prime, or any quick commerce e-commerce. Ad is something people are not very happy about, and I actually deal with that. So I get a lot of pushback from the customers also that hey, why don't you turn off the ads in my day-to-day personal life? So I currently handle the ads both from brand side and on the consumer application side of sector.
Awesome. Awesome. There's so much to unpack. It's such a great journey. I just want to dive in straight away. So we'll start with Amazon because that was something that was, of course, great. You were a software engineer there. So at what point did, product management come into the picture? How did you figure out that, okay, this is something that could be, worth your time or something worth chasing?
Okay. So the reasons are twofold. One is more on a personal front from a career perspective. I'll answer on that those lines. The second was my aspirational or what I am good at. So first thing which led me to believe that the development or the engineering part might not be the end goal for me. I think that the space is good. To be very frank, developers are huge in terms of number. So that was reason one for me, because even if I excel and do very good, the visibility ended to a team lead or tech lead to an engineering manager. Amazon being, I think, Fortune 2 that point in time. So there was no visibility to CXO level. And for fair reasons, half of the CXOs are based outside India. So that was a
Mm.
personal reason in terms of visibility. So I'm being very honest over here. Second was that my decision making has always been data based. My decision making, at least what I've seen in my previous roles, had been above average and towards good because I was I think 3.5, 4 years of experience when I was in Amazon. So these
Mm-hmm.
2 points actually led me to navigate into the product management function, as I thought that my decision making is much better and I can actually give a good input, or basically be a good decision maker when it comes to what to build, why to build, and basically answering all the whys. So these two reasons actually led me to move from an engineering focused career to a more product focused career. And one thing again, which I also notice is that if you see Sundar Pichai, I think that is one
Mm-hmm.
example. The Forgetting the name, the CEO of YouTube, who was there, I think 2 years back, he got changed.
Mm-hmm.
He it was also a product manager.
Correct.
I think the CEO of Nike is also a product manager. So I did some digging, and I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that good CXOs are actually, at least in tech companies, have been a product manager in some form and shape in their career. So why not take that risk and strive for something which is the best for me in the long run? So those were the major points which led me to move from engineering to a product role.
Nice. Interesting. Interesting. Did your MBA help as well in this transition? Was there some seeds that were planted there?
Yes. So again, as I mentioned, so I generally do a lot of research before taking
Mm-hmm.
a decision. So then I Googled a lot. I had discussions with my college seniors. Couple of parameters or nuances which I noticed. All the good product managers were either from IITs, if not MBA. If they were an MBA, then they were from tier one college,
Mm.
ISBs, IIMs, FMS. That was my first trigger point to think about pursuing an MBA. Given there was a cost involved, plus there would have been an opportunity cost of the salary I would be letting go during that MBA phase. That was first step. Second, what I thought, it's again more on a personal line and depends on employee to employee. I was actually a bit of an introvert because I was in an IC role, right? So daily interactions with a lot of folks were not there. It was majorly tech to tech discussions. So I was not a person who used to give speeches or who used to present a lot of things, right? That stakeholder management and alignment between various teams and being a good public speaker is something which I knew lacked in me for fair reasons, because I was not put into that situations when I was in engineering. Whereas
Mm.
MBA gets the gap fulfilled because there are 3, 4 case studies in a day. You have 5, 6 different group with 5, 6 different people. So that human dynamics, that human nature, how to talk with someone, how to know your audience and correct your answers depending on that. For example, if I have to talk a little bit about a product, my verbiage towards a dev will be totally different rather than towards, say, a GTM person or a business person. I'll be more number
Good.
and revenue focused there and more tech focused there. So those nuances, how to align stakeholders, was a personal gap which I knew was there in me, and that got completed and the gap got fulfilled during my MBA journey. And basically, if you go to any IM, it's that they give you all nighters, 5, 6 case studies you have to present 5 days a week. So that gets you the preparation so that whatever the company would throw, you would be able to handle it. So those things actually helped in my day-to-day product journey.
Nice. That's very interesting. I mean, yeah, it's a completely different perspective because uh, MBA brings in a lot of, especially the network plus this kind of grind, I think is really helpful. Right. Next was Walmart, right?
Yeah.
So now you spent a few years there. Now you've, as you said, moved to Zepto. But wanted to understand what kind of products were you working there? What was the problems that you were solving in your role there?
Okay, sure. So the Walmart stint had two different areas. The first one, which I
Okay.
was handling, was basically the offline store product movement. Let me explain that. So if
Mm-hmm.
this is an airport, right? This may
Mm-hmm.
be at a Walmart store X on floor
Mm.
number 2 of a Walmart store on shelf number 5. So how do we call it? Is
Okay.
that floor plan and planograms? These are basic terminologies
Mm-hmm.
of the industry itself. So the whole product movement, automating that across the globe. For example, if there is a US based offline store of Walmart, you will have 4 seasons. And suppose if the shelf is of cloth, during the winter season, automatically it should have the full sleeve sweaters or pullover, something of those sorts. But
Mm-hmm.
during summer, then automatically that product being pushed on that shelf should be sleeveless shirts or shorts. These are very
Okay.
basic examples. So
Mm.
automating the whole flow, because Walmart being Walmart, it has the largest number of employees also, and manual intervention to things is time taking and errorsome also. So I was in
Mm.
charge of automating the whole flow using a tool known as JDA. So out of the
Okay.
box, plus we were actually making changes to it so that the whole supply chain of the offline stores across globe changes. That was the
Hmm.
first part I was handling. Then second part I was handling the quick commerce for Canada, Mexico, and Chile, three
Okay.
basic geographies. And if you would go to any website, right, Amazon or Flipkart, on the product page, you will always see more often than not there is a view from more sellers drop down. If you go to
Mhm.
any pen or
Correct,
any
correct.
pencil,
You
right?
can see
So
multiple sellers and options. Hmm.
correct, correct. So there is a good logic behind that. That what there are two problems. What to which seller plus price to show to the consumer. It can be dynamic in nature. You may see a pen from seller A. I may see a pen from seller B. Maybe because inventory issues are there, or maybe in your geography the rating is very poor for that seller. So
Hmm.
it was in pricing and offer engine which led to a very transparent and easy customer purchase journey because we had to show the best seller and the best price, so the affinity of a customer to buy that product increases, and the probability of them returning that decreases. So mapping the seller the price as per the customer was my main charter, pricing and offer, and three basically geographies.
Interesting. But I mean, very interesting. But the first part, right? Let's double click a little bit on that. What was the hiring process like there? Because this seems like something that requires a lot of expertise. And I'm sure once you're on the job, you would have picked up very quickly. But aren't these like, or did your like MBA prepare you for that? Just help me understand how did they like take that bet on you? What was the hiring process like?
Sure. So let me touch on the MBA part first, and then
Mhm.
I'll get on to the interview
Ah,
process of at
sure,
least Walmart.
sure.
So during the MBA phase itself, as I mentioned, we will have case studies. That case studies might be an RCA case study. That case study might be sometimes we have to push new products in new geographies. So we understand, say, frameworks like Pestle, Porter, right? Porter's five forces, Pestle, other things, right? How to get into a new market. Or
Mhm.
maybe innovating a product, because then you have a product life cycle which is an S-shaped curve. After a point, the product has to be innovated or it will be having a lower market share. So those frameworks we learned and we practiced a lot during our MBA. Putting it
Hmm.
to application of it is basically case studies that is being asked in the all the product interviews basically. So how Walmart plans is that first call will be majorly an exploratory call, where someone, the hiring manager or the hiring manager of another parallel team, will get on a call with you for half an hour, 40 minutes. They'll deep dive on any particular project which you have done in your previous organization so that they understand your thought process. What have you built? What was the scale? What was the impact? Did you actually launch it and forget about it? Or did you launch it and then monitor it, say, post 5 months, 6 months, right? And then did you innovate it or not? So, how is your thought process? If you get through that round, then there will be 3 or 4 case studies round, depending on your performance in each. And those case studies may be an RCA question, how to launch a product in a new market question, or it can be guesstimate question. So 3 or 4 rounds, basically targeted towards case studies, and then one HR round or culture fit. It depends on team to team if they want to have a culture fit, because again it's a big organization, it's a multicultural organization because it's all over the globe. You may need to
Correct.
talk to someone in Argentina, you may need to talk to someone in Chile. Their market
Mhm.
dynamics are different. Maybe some markets are not as price sensitive as India. US may not be that price sensitive. Mexico may be that price sensitive, right? So understanding the nuances and the stakeholders in each different geography is a tricky thing, and it needs to be developed. So there are culture rounds in some teams. So basically expo round, 3 or 4 case studies round, and then a culture fit round, and then you get the offer letter. This is the elaborate process of how Walmart functions.
Interesting. And did not having like a product manager stint before that affected? How did you like bridge that?
Okay, so this I will answer it in two ways. Practically, what I've noticed is that if you have in your resume a tier 1 MBA or a tier 1 college, it can be MBA or a non MBA, that helps. Plus, if you are already a product manager, that helps. And I've noticed one thing, most of the product managers who I've met and non MBA, they have moved internally from a tech role to a product role so that they get a product manager in their resume. And then it becomes
Hmm.
easier for them to apply to any external roles. And there is a fair reason to that. And why I say this very strongly is that suppose someone is an engineer, they have to learn Java, just as an instance. You can
Correct.
learn Java using Lead Code, Code Chef, YouTube. There are a lot of books and a lot of resources outside which will help you learn. But product
Mm.
is very ambiguous. I know product in Microsoft functions differently. Product in Amazon, Walmart, PhonePe, Zepto, they all function differently. In some organizations, there is no program manager, so you would be needed to work as a part-time program also. So the nuances change depending on the company, and it becomes very ambiguous. And hence, most of the companies will slightly prefer a person who has product experience. But if someone does not have, I will actually push them or advocate and encourage them to try and move to product in their existing organization, because they would be working in that organization and they would have a lot of know-how about the product they're working on. Moving to product will be easier once you get a product. Then maybe a couple of years down the line, you can think of switching as a product. So this is
Got
how
it.
I generally advise folks also.
Got it. Interesting. Interesting. And for you, of course, the college would have helped to kind of get through to the first round, and then your performance in the rounds basically took over.
Yes.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Got it. So this is, of course, Walmart, like a very interesting set of things that you did. How long were you there at this particular piece of the stint?
Okay, so in Walmart, I was there about a little bit more than 2 years. Then I moved
Mhm.
to PhonePe. I had
Mhm.
different reasons of moving to PhonePe. In PhonePe, I was there about almost 2 years, 2.1 if I'm not wrong. And recently, I've moved to Zepto, I think 2 to 3 months back.
Got it. Got it. I was very intrigued by, quick commerce in different companies and different countries, sorry. I mean, how is the phenomena different from what we have here? Is it more like, 10-minute everywhere, or is it more around, just a smaller version of the overall e-commerce? How different is it in the countries you mentioned when you said Canada, Mexico, and Chile, etc.?
Okay, so it again depends on the geography. One thing which I know and understand from my experience in quick commerce, e-commerce, and working with, say, US-based products and India-based products is one thing, that India has crowd and India has cheap labor, to be very honest and frank. That
Of course.
enables a lot of things to be done manually rather than it being automated. I can give you other examples also. So basically, this is one thing which actually makes a difference when you launch a quick commerce or a 10-minute delivery sort of thing in India. Whereas if you go to Europe, the 10-minute delivery might move to 1 hour delivery. And so I've been to Europe also during my
Mhm.
college. There was an international exchange. I did not find a lot of 10-minute delivery or UPI application or any kind of
Mhm.
seamlessness, because the capital cost over there is very, very high, at least in Europe. And even
Mhm.
in countries like Mexico and Chile, you have a lot of different regulations. You have, say, a base pay rate, which actually needs to be paid. So scalability is also a problem over there. Plus return and other things come into picture, and the logistics cost also come into picture. India being a cost sensitive and a labor intensive market, it becomes very easy to fulfill those needs, because for every product you will have a subset of users who would want to use it. For example, there is a application Handpicked. I think 2 days back I was
Yeah.
seeing there.
Kind of recently. Hmm.
Yeah, so I was seeing that in my society, and I saw around 50, 60 folks showing interest, at least in my society. So every product will have a good niche in India. India being a populated country where, at least in Bangalore, you will have a user base for almost all the requirements. See Snapdeal, it's recently, I think 2 years back, it shot up, and I was seeing yesterday, at least on Sundays, the whole Bangalore slots are full. So
Yeah.
I was not able to find a house help also last Sunday. So for everything, you will have a user base, because for everything, when you have a user base, there will be a product. Someone can build a product to solve it. Whereas in other countries, the problem might not exist in the first place. For example, if you go to US, the capital cost of any house help is very high. So
Yeah.
not a lot of people will actually use your app only to get in house help. It can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So the geography, the mindset of people actually is very different. If you go to Europe, it's not price sensitive. It's actually a luxury market in Europe. Louis Vuitton, Dior, everything
Mhm.
originated from there. So people might be more luxury oriented rather than price sensitive. So depends on the
Yes.
geography and the nature of user base, but not all products can be common across. Just one more example before I end this answer.
Yes.
Credit is something which is very highly used in US because of
Hmm.
lower interest rates. In India, you will see that UPI is very highly used. I think we have around 70 crore transactions day to day
Yes.
basis, and
Yeah.
around 1 lakh crore, little bit lower than 1 lakh crore total value. and it shot up around the time of COVID. Basically, in US, you will have a credit transaction. So nuances change and the persona changes, and that is where you will have different products and different GTM for different markets.
Nice. Must have been very interesting to kind of focus on all of these different markets. Nice. Very, very interesting to know. So moving on to PhonePe then. Of course, Walmart seems like a great stint. What was your role at PhonePe? I mean, it really intrigued me when you talked about, the offline and all of that. So want to understand what was the kind of problems that you were solving on PhonePe and what was your day-to-day there like?
Sure. So I'll just give you a reason of PhonePe as well, because a lot of folks have asked me, if you were in a Fortune 1 company, a lot of people try and go to Walmart. Why change from Walmart to, say, I won't call
Absolutely.
PhonePe an MNC, but a mid-level company, right? Pre-IPO
Yeah.
company. So there was a selfish reason again, because one thing which I saw in Amazon also and in Walmart also, wealth creation, and that's an input from my end, whoever will listen to this, at least early in the career, we can focus on struggling more, working harder, and pushing ourselves so that we end up getting paid for, in very frank words, or getting an ROI out of our hard work, which I've generally noticed might be better in mid-sized startups because you get a lot of ESOPs as well. So
Mm.
wealth generation was something back in my mind that I need to deep dive there. So that was my reason actually to move PhonePe. And the other reason I had moved to PhonePe was that in India, fintech was actually very good as compared to other countries. That's reason one. And PhonePe and Paytm at that point in time were the two major partners. From a culture point of view, PhonePe, I had heard from my college seniors, is a little bit better. So I chose
Mm.
to interview for PhonePe as well. And the charter was very horizontally wide, in the sense
Okay.
that I was handling the merchant payments. Now, when we talk about merchant payments, we will have a normal static QR. You go to any corner shop, pay. We will have dynamic QRs. We will have dynamic QR devices. If you go to natural ice creams, you will find I think Amazon and PhonePe, both. There is a small dynamic QR device. Then there comes
Mm-hmm.
POS machine, and then there comes a angle of POS machines being integrated with applications like Vepar, Paid Puja, or any other billing systems as well. Then
Mm-hmm.
you have a inventory or a logistics based and an on ground fleet. So I was handling the end to end charter over there to enable, basically, or to get merchants use PhonePe's payment solution. It can be any of those. It can be sound boxes, EDCs, QR, and the problems were very, very dynamic in nature. Just as an instance, right? Okay, let me take an example of a static QR, which was having a fixed amount. So just to give you a high level, toll plazas. Toll plazas have very high traffic. Everyone goes to the toll plazas if they do not have that NFC tag, right?
Faster.
Then fast tag, right? Then they will have to either pay cash, which is twice the amount, if I'm not wrong. That's
Correct.
a, yeah, cost issue, right? No one would want to pay twice the amount, or use, say, UPI if they don't have cash, because a lot of people now don't carry cash. You open the QR, you scan the QR, it takes about 10 seconds. There is a line being built up on that toll plaza. Now
Mm.
we came up with an idea that, hey, whoever scans, we'll pre-fill the amount of, say, 50, because in toll plazas or in any unmanned stations, say in a
Mm.
museum or a ticket counter or a zoo, you will have 5 rupee, 10 rupee denominations. There are prices fixed,
Correct.
say 5, 10 slabs. So we came
Correct.
up with an idea that we'll have a fixed amount QR or a range bound QR being stuck at
Mm.
different toll plazas. So currently, if you go to Washi, they have 8 of our QR codes with different denominations, starting from 80 to 180 or 280. And if someone scans, the friction of entering incorrect amount, the 1 or 2 second delay of entering an amount is reduced, so
Mm.
that someone scans and then just moves past it. So the whole
Very interesting.
problem of traffic got solved in the eyes of toll plazas, and that
Mm.
extended from toll plazas to unmanned stations to vending machines. Suppose in vending machine, if you buy a Coca-Cola, it's 40 rupees only, 40 or 50,
Mm.
depending on the quantity. So you
Correct.
can, yeah, you can stick different 50, 60, 70 rupee QR code, just scan, pay, and move away. There is no manual error there. So that solves a problem in real time. So there are different phases to it. And the second part was, I was working on an EDC or swipe machine application, enabling the whole journey, how to show the transactions, right? Can we incorporate the customer support inside the swipe machine itself? so that someone will not have to open their mobile phone or computer and log on to PhonePe's dashboard. So making it easy for someone to do a transaction and basically interacting with PhonePe so that we increase the overall NPS or the CSAT score of the end customer was the ultimate goal. And these were the kind of problems we were solving day to day.
Oh, very interesting. And I mean, I think the obsession over these kind of details is what makes it, very different and what makes it one of my favorite applications to use as well in terms of, you know, being frictionless. I mean, I know broad question, but how does PhonePe build products? Like what did you find different in terms of, your experience at, of course, the Fortune 1 company where you worked at in terms of Walmart versus PhonePe? What was different in terms of how PMs or PhonePe in general builds products?
Sure. So that is pretty interesting. And I was also
Mhm.
intrigued when I joined PhonePe. And I think the major USP of working in an Indian startup is that you can step out of the office, talk to the customer directly. For example, even if you say any billing system or PhonePe or Paytm, you can just step out of the office, go to any corner shop, ask them the feedback. They might be a little bit agitated if something is not working well. Again, that's a
Correct.
part and parcel of being a PM as well. But the interaction with customer is very, very easy if you work in an Indian startup, and PhonePe being one of
Mm.
those. So I used to visit a lot of petrol pumps. So there is an Aster pharmacy. I visited that a couple of times. I visited Apollo natural ice creams because
Mm.
customer obsession is something which PhonePe has, and we do not
Mm.
build anything without a good, solid identification of the pain point. And if that pain point needs to be addressed, I'll just digress a little bit to tell you a short story.
Oh,
So
of course, go ahead.
yeah, so I visited about 20, 30 petrol bunks in Ahmedabad and in Bangalore as well. Now, if you go to any dispenser, the
Mm.
data which I found from Hindustan Petroleum and BPCL was that 95 plus percent of the transactions are being done through QR code, mostly,
Okay.
right? And the fuel which is being dispensed is being noted in their HPCL or BPCL portal, whatever the petrol is being dispensed, and the payment is being done on a QR code. There was no reconciliation. Suppose the payment which we got is 100 rupees, right? And the petrol which was dispensed, if say 1 liter, then it matches whatever the price of the petrol is. Now, I went ahead and my hypothesis was, what if I can automate it? I have ways to integrate the dispenser with the QR code, and I'll just give a report or a summary end of the day to the back office manager of a petrol pump that, hey, 5 liters were consumed from your dispenser and 500 rupees you received from all the QRs that you use PhonePe for. As simple as that. So this was my hypothesis, and in my head, that point in time, it was a good problem to solve. So I went and did a lot of market research. The one feedback which I got to know that, hey, why do you want the back office manager to open a portal and match when the person who is actually dispensing the petrol writes and gives you at the end of the day? The point came back again to that India has cheap labor. The person who is dispensing actually writes it
Correct.
and gives it for no additional time and effort to the back office manager. So my product idea
Mm.
actually would not have worked if I would have gone ahead and built it, if I would have not
Mm.
discussed with 30, 40 petrol bunks back office managers, right? So customer obsession and identification of a pain point, getting the user persona, and figuring out if this is a scalable solution. I think that is very good in all the product managers of PhonePe. The due diligence that goes behind identifying a problem. And what we generally do, we have a product discovery phase where all the PMs of PhonePe in each team, they take out time, visit the end merchant. Although we have GTM and sales team also, but product folks actually go ahead, discuss with the customers, and understand firsthand what the pain point is. A lot of times we go and sit next to the shopkeeper only. That whatever
Mm.
you are doing in your natural habitat, we'll just notice it and we'll identify what the problem may occur in future and then solve it. So being customer first approach, having data backed and anecdotal evidences is something which
Mhm.
everyone in PhonePe is trained to do, and that enables PhonePe to build products which are heavily used. So if you see the UPI is more than 50%, even the smart speaker in which Amitabh Bachchan voices comes out, right? Almost all the offline merchant players, they use it because we are actually
50.
solving a problem by deep diving into, yeah, because of deep diving
Mm.
into their natural habitat and understanding whatever they need. And I think that is the very good core competency of all the PMs in PhonePe.
Nice. Interesting. Just one more thing on it. So once this opportunity validation is done, do you like practically go and present it to your manager, to a team of PMs, and then it gets like greenlit, or what's the process? Or do PMs have the ownership to take it forward on their own? How does that work?
So it's a little bit dynamic in nature, depends
Mhm.
on team to team. But generally, how do we follow is that, say, we go about a normal quarterly roadmap. I think most of the companies
Okay.
would have a quarterly roadmap. So
Mhm.
in the next quarter, whatever I have to build, I'll go do my market research, do a discovery phase, and then
Yeah.
quantify that if we build this, what may be the North Star metric for me? Will it give me good enough revenue? Will the target of next AOP, annual operating plan, be met if I solve the top five problems which I think? So the whole
Mm.
offline PM team, say, has six, seven product managers, assuming, right? We will all have a different problem points, pain points, which we are solving for the customer. We will sit down, do a prioritization between teams, because again, the engineering teams are kind of similar or different, and we have finite resources. All the companies have finite
Mm.
resources. Then we generally do kind of a stack ranking based on what to build, what not to build. Something might be compliance, NPCI circular would have come in. Just as an instance, I'll give you the Bheem logo in any QR. It has to
Mhm.
occupy a certain aspect ratio and cannot be in font size lower than any other company's logo. Suppose if there is a Paytm logo, the Bheem cannot be lower than that. So those are newer circulars that may come in. It might not be
Mm.
totally revenue forward. Then all the PMs, the director of product, we all sit down, see that these are the major pain problems, these are the scale of those pain points, and if we solve it, we'll get this much money in terms of profit or revenue. Or say CSAT or NPS, or increase our number of transactions or TPV. We then sit,
Mm.
identify, and across the whole board, we then come up with a stack rank where everyone is aligned, and then we present it to, say, leadership and get their green signal on that. There may be changes 10-15% of the time, but I would say about 70 to 80% is the owner of the product manager to create a healthy backlog, to get that what will it impact, what is the North Star that you are trying to chase, how will it benefit the team, how will it benefit the org in terms of numbers. And if you have those data, only 10-15% changes are there from the leadership if need be. Else, it will be a green signal because you have proved your worth in your due diligence.
Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Got it. And the onus of finding these problems is completely on the PM. I'm assuming that there you don't have, you may have some researchers to support you, or is it completely the PM's ownership to find these problems?
So, both how we generally do it, and I personally like that approach also. The
Mm-hmm.
hypothesis is being built by product managers. Also, there is a
Okay.
sales team, GTM team. They also do market visit or customer research. There will be a healthy subset of backlog there. And then the PMs, they are encouraged to go and discuss with the customers, as I mentioned earlier. So, the
I see.
product managers will build a hypothesis. Now, to convert an hypothesis to an actual stat, right, that this is a confirmed pain point. From a data perspective, we need minimum of 30 data points just to maintain a normal curve, right? Because
Interesting.
the number of PMs in an industry or in an organization is very less around. It's a lean team generally in PhonePe.
Correct.
Then we take that hypothesis, run it by the sales team and the business teams, so that they stack rank or help us identify that, hey, the five problems which product team has identified, these three are the most pervasive in nature, so that the scale is there, the scale is present, and we might solve a lot of problem if the priority 1, 2, 3 is being set. So we then take to prove or disprove our hypothesis, we take help of the sales and GTM team, and then they come back because they have a lot of on ground support, that they go ahead and ask our questions. We prepare a questionnaire to the customers, and whichever problem is pervasive enough, we go ahead and fix those at later stages.
Interesting. I mean, it feels like a very robust and set process. I
Yeah.
think that's what happens when you have that. I mean, you'll have to have that for the say scale and size that PhonePe is
Yes.
working on. Got it. Interesting. I didn't touch upon one more thing. I mean, a couple more things actually that I'm very intrigued on in terms of PhonePe. How was the hiring process different from Walmart? Was it similar? What was the hiring process like?
Okay. So one thing which is different with PhonePe is,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, okay, any bigger organization, I'll compare first of all a big MNC to a mid-sized startup, right? The difference is that in a big MNC, you will own a small part of a bigger chunk because there are a lot of PMs and folks who work in an organization. In a mid-sized company such as PhonePe, I've known Zomato, Swiggy, I have people there. The horizontal breadth is quite high. It's not one single
Hmm.
item which you may deep dive on. There may be five different charters which you should be or would be handling once you are in a mid-sized startup. Having said that, the interview process is on similar lines. For example, all 5 days work week is there in PhonePe and in
Hmm.
Zepto also currently. So they expect someone to be rigorous in nature. That is one, to be a go-getter and to take full ownership, because spoon feeding other things might not be there when it's a smaller
Hmm.
organization. And because it's a
Sure.
smaller organization, it's a very lean team. So you would need to understand the business side of it, the revenue side of it, the logistics part of it, the marketing part of it, the legal aspect of things, the design aspect of things, right? Because when it's PhonePe, you have a lot of legal compliance and other things because it's money movement, right? So
Yeah.
you will have to understand those part as well. So the interview touches all the parts, and that is where we hire good PMs. So the first round is basically again exploratory to understand what you have done in past. Then there is a business round so that the person understands how a business functions. Whatever product we will build at the end of the day, it should sell, it should scale, and we should get the ROI or the outcome which we expect. So there is a
Hmm.
business round to understand the business side of things. Then there are 2 to 3, depending on your performance, case study or PM first rounds, and there will be ambiguous problems or RCA questions or guesstimates, depend on whatever the interviewer would want to actually test. Then comes
Hmm.
the tech round, which will not be very easy. It's a little bit on an more than average side of what a general PM should know. The reason being, PhonePe being a tech first company, there is a lot of tech that goes into building a product. And as all the product managers are talking to technical folks day in and day out, we need to
Hmm.
understand how systems or solutions should be built from both product and technical side of it. Is there technical challenges there? So there is a tech round
Hmm.
also. So explore round, business round, 2 to 3 case studies from PM, tech round, and if needed, then there is a hiring manager round, or the hiring manager may take a case study round itself. So this is the overall process of how they identify each attribute that a person should have before working with PhonePe.
And each of these are elimination rounds, like you get eliminated or you get the feedback at the end.
So if the explore round is clear, the first round, if the hiring
Hmm.
manager or the director of product thinks that you are good for subsequent rounds, that all the rounds will happen. Say the next 3 or 4
Okay.
rounds will happen, and then there is a group meeting or debrief for with all the interviewers, and they will give their respective
Interesting.
rating, and then they will come up with the hiring manager to we need to hire, re-interview or not.
Got it. Got it. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Seems a lot more robust than I think there are some use cases that you just have to do. For example,
Yeah.
compliance and business and all of that understanding. So seems pretty interesting. Right. A couple of more things. In terms of course, I'll talk about Zepto maybe briefly as well because we've just joined and that's something that is also very interesting, quick commerce right now. But how are you looking at AI? I mean, how is for example, PhonePe or even Zepto now, how are you integrating what's going on with LLMs and agentic and everything that's going around in the world right now around AI? Is it changing something significantly, or the fundamentals are the same? What has changed, for you and the companies that you're working at?
Sure. So again, I look at it from two different lenses. So I
Mhm.
think the AIPM word has now being used left, right, and center. And many people know what an actual AIPM is. Some of the folks might not know. So I generally bifurcate this into two parts. One is, suppose if we are building a normal quiz application where the backend is static, that there are 5 questions, 5 answers, MCQ, that's a basic quiz, no involvement of AI. But we use AI to write PRD to get the user persona to make the Figma or the design. That is one part, to use AI to build a normal product. Second part
Yeah.
is, am I building a product that involves AI? For example, recommendation engine, right, which
Hmm.
Netflix uses. So that's a AI product. And the first one is you build a normal product using AI. People differ in these two understanding and often get confused. At least in the work which I was doing and I am doing, there is a flavor of both. For example,
Okay.
in PhonePe, again depends on use case to use case. On the first part which I mentioned, I generally use Google LM a lot. because I
Mm-hmm.
have internal documentations. I have documentations from NPCI. I have documentations from RBI, right? And those are longer, very long documents, right? I
Correct.
use that data, get it synthesized, or create a mind map, or create a maybe a user journey flow, how it should function, or create a high
Mm-hmm.
level design using Gemini suite in general. And I specifically use Google LM, Notebook LM to
Notebook.
synthesize
Yeah.
my findings. Yeah. So I use
I see.
that part in my day-to-day life, then Gemini for prototyping as well, because it can create a React code, and out of the box it will give you a preview over there. So I generally
Mm-hmm.
fall to Gemini suite because Google from the company has enterprise edition, so the data privacy is also there integrated already. So I use that suite for doing day-to-day work or using AI. Now coming on to actually using AI in a product, there are different use cases. For example, Zepto is heavily relying on AI to move their customer support say, towards an automated flow, hence reducing manual cost. That's one. In PhonePe, I think you would also know a lot of merchants in India, they have MCC code, merchant category code.
Yeah.
Petrol pump will have different, retail will have different, right? Now, NPCI says that there needs to be a CPV, contact point verification, in order to identify if the merchant is actually an offline merchant or not. There needs to be some physical identification, right? So someone
Mm-hmm.
needs to go click images, figure out, can I ask the merchant to click image of their facade or of their shop, use an AI to figure out if it's a jewelry shop, if it's a petrol pump, if it's a retail shop, and identify the MCC code using an AI. I can train the model on various images of shops. That one use case. Second is in a swipe machine, because you have cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a chance of fraud. Stolen card can be
Correct. Of
used,
course.
right? The card can be used outside the shop 20 kilometers to 100 kilometers outside the shop, right? It can be misused. So can I detect fraud? Can I identify a pattern in data to block transactions, say for X minutes or X number of hours, right? I can use AI to get MCC codes, block transactions, move from manual chatbot to say only 20% manual and 80% automated AI enabled chatbot. Then I can use that AI to enhance the support experience, make the tone warm, give the model internal documentation of when and how a refund should be given, when the
Mm-hmm.
product is delivered or not. One thing which I would like to point out, there is a thing known as mark delivered, not delivered, MDND. Suppose if you
Correct.
order a thumbs up, but it
Mm.
actually did not come, you cannot take an image of a product which you have not received. So
Correct.
I can, yeah, take two images, one in the dark store, one from you, and actually ask an AI to map it. If it is not there,
Just the same.
then
Mm.
yeah, then I may use that to fulfill or give you refund. And if I see that, okay, you have been asking refund for the last 6 times, I may block you this time. So all these things can be automated using an AI, and you can have different sentiment analysis in customer support and respond like that. In fintech, you may have fraud checks, MCG code detection. So those things are actually being built by the organization which we have done. And just one last point on it, because AI is exploding and is making sense a lot, right? In any quick
Yeah.
commerce, I'll give you 5 6 application. In any quick commerce, if you type say milk or
Mm-hmm.
MIL, the system will show you milk, the system will show you milky mist, milky bar, right? It will show you 10 suggestions. Now I can use AI to give you different suggestions and give me different suggestions according to whatever you have purchased in past, whatever you have searched in
Correct.
past, right? Bumble, Tinder, Shadi.com, they use different kind of recommendation system to get the affinity of user one with user two. Netflix
Mm-hmm.
uses that for whatever you have watched and changes depending on time of day and other things also. So recommendation, or how I put it, is basically matching X with Y. It can be
I
quick
see.
commerce, e-commerce. It can be gaming. If you are playing poker on some platform, who do I match you with? Who is the person
Mm.
who will be around a similar rating with you? So any kind of matching is somewhere where AI excels and has been used for a long time. And I think these are the verticals where you can use AI. And in a non-AI product, you can use it to write PRD, have your analysis done, and actually solidify your findings.
Nice, nice, interesting. I think, yeah, I think the mental model that I use is wherever there was a requirement of a brain and the brain
Mhm.
was required to do like a tedious standard job, you
Yeah.
can just replace the brain with an LLM, and then the kind of examples that you gave, right, to identify fraud or to click photos and all of that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned, of course, Gemini suite. Are there any other AI tools that you've been using or that you find underrated or that you find really valuable that you'd want to share?
So generally, I fall back to Gemini, but Claude
Mm-hmm.
is something which I use in my personal life as well. Claude and a little bit of Notion AI. The reason I use that is to synthesize or give me a better phrase or better wording, or if I have to synthesize a document into a human readable format, which is very easy to read, I generally fall back to Claude. If we have to create PowerPoint presentation in the form of React or PPT format or HTML, I sometimes fall back to Claude because I've noticed
Mm-hmm.
the speed and the understanding of Claude is much better, at least for me, than ChatGPT. Although I have ChatGPT Premium also, but that's
Mm.
basically for to and fro answers. And I think Perplexity I use generally to get an understanding of real time data. Claude I fall back to if I have to have some kind of PDF or an output in a specific format. That is where I use Claude. And generally, how I do it is that if I have to map the whole product journey, right? You have user mapping, you have user journey mapping, then you create user persona. So I start sometimes with Notion AI also. If you give
I
a
see.
user and a user persona, Notion AI gives you a very good user journey in forms of a storybook.
I
That
see.
I give it to Claude at times and get a good visual representation of what the natural habitat of the user looks like. And then it's on me to identify the pain point and then go to Gemini to create a wireframe or a product, or basically get Figma Make AI, which is embedded in Figma, to design some kind of high level prototype and then show it to other folks in the team or leadership. That this is how I imagine a particular product to be.
Interesting. Interesting. Very nice. I think, yeah, apparently Claude is miles ahead of others, especially in these kind of tasks. Awesome. I think, yeah, this was great. Just one final word. Any advice for aspiring product managers? I mean, you've seen the lot, right? You've seen engineering to PM, MBA. So there is so much that, there's so much relevance that your advice carries. Any advice towards product managers aspiring to get into, you know, roles at top companies like yourself?
Yeah, so I have a different kind of thought process to this. Might not be
Sure.
aligned with a lot of product managers out there, right? So
Of course.
depends on what part of the career you are at. Suppose if you have just graduated from college, or if it's your first job as a PM, I would very seriously advocate and encourage that people should try for say mid-sized startups, snap it for once, right? The
Mm.
reason being, there are two things. You can be a smaller fish in a very big pond, simple analogy, right? Or a bigger fish in a smaller pond. I would say try for a mid-sized startup because the exposure which we get is is uncomparable to any kind of money which you might earn at beginning of your career. You might leave, say you might leave Microsoft for say a normal company. I'll just take it for example PhonePe. But the amount of knowledge you will gain in PhonePe will be much higher what you might get at a bigger organization. Simply because there are a lot of folks and it's a well-established company. Innovation in most of the companies take time and your learning curve will be much sharper in a mid-sized startup because it's a smaller company. You will be tasked to do almost everything in the product. Create a GTM plan, create a sales deck, go talk to the business counterpart, go talk to the client directly, go talk to the customers on ground directly. And those things cannot come from sitting at a desk or just doing a product work. So expanding the horizon becomes very important. And hence I would advocate that anyone who is just starting or maybe around 2 to 3 years of experience, go for a mid-sized startup because the exposure is uncomparable. And second part, which I had mentioned earlier, was wealth generation. According to me, only happens with ESOPs. Again, it's a debatable thing, but I personally think that ESOPs is something which everyone should look into beginning of the career. Once you mature and find your niche, that hey, fintech is something I'm interested in, quick commerce is something I'm interested in, then you can try and go for a mature company so that you can give your inputs and provide good output in the organization. And for the first 2 to 4 years, it's basically learning for a product managers because it's not a hard skill that you can go learn and start giving output on day one. It's a
Correct.
lot of soft skills, yeah, and market dynamics that you would need to understand. Not all